Our story begins in May 2010. That's when we first see young Peter Parker at the Stark Expo, who is almost killed by a drone, but Stark saves him. Meanwhile, after Abraham Erskine's successful experiment, the government dreams of replicating the success to create an army of super soldiers. Scientist Bruce Banner is working on a gamma radiation experiment, hoping to create a special serum that would make a person stronger. But instead of the perfect soldier, he turns into a green monster. From the first transformation, Bruce completely loses control. He destroys the lab, accidentally injuring his girlfriend Betty Ross and several soldiers. Betty Ross is the daughter of General Ross. After this, they put a real hunt on him, and General Ross does everything possible to catch Banner and use his power for his own purposes. 158 days pass without a single incident. He studies breathing techniques and learns to control his emotions while repairing equipment. Banner accidentally cuts his finger, and his blood gets into a bottle of soda. Later, an elderly man drinks it. It turns out to be Stanley. He gets severe poisoning and dies. This is how Bruce, without realizing it, leaves a trail that leads the military right to him. Meanwhile, Banner has been corresponding with a mysterious scientist under the username Mr. Blue, who convinces him that he knows a way to get rid of the Hulk forever. All he needs is more of his blood, as well as data about the experiment to continue the research. Meanwhile, General Ross gets tired of waiting. He assigns elite soldier Emil Blonsky to find Banner at any cost. Blonsky is a true professional. He's faster and more experienced than most soldiers. When special forces track down Banner, he manages to escape, but due to constant pressure and panic, he still transforms into the Hulk. And that's when the real carnage begins. The Hulk literally tears apart an entire factory, tossing soldiers around like toys, and disappears before the army can stop him. The military finds his belongings and laptop, through which they learn about his correspondence with Mr. Blue. Bruce himself wakes up somewhere in the Guatemalan jungle. He buys the cheapest clothes and then heads to the US because he wants to gather data about his experiment, but before that, he sees Betty Ross. Betty had long believed that Bruce had disappeared forever and had even started dating someone else. To sneak into the building where the data is stored, Bruce disguises himself as an ordinary pizza delivery guy, but unfortunately, all the data had been erased. When he returns, Betty spots him. It turns out she had saved all the scientific data. Meanwhile, General Ross realizes that ordinary soldiers aren't enough. So he takes a risky step and injects Emil Blonsky with an experimental serum, and now Blonsky becomes much stronger. The army quickly tracks down Banner, and the military manages to surround the building, forcing Bruce to transform again. Another carnage begins. Despite the serum, Blonsky can't do anything against the Hulk. One powerful blow literally turns him into a broken doll. He survives by some miracle and recovers. Blonsky is completely obsessed with the Hulk. Having suffered severe injuries, he demands even more of the serum. Ross begins to doubt but still agrees. Meanwhile, Bruce and Betty finally reach Mr. Blue. The mysterious scientist turns out to be Samuel Stearns. He's confident he can cure Bruce. The experiment begins and is indeed successful, but the scientists aren't yet sure if the effect is temporary or permanent. Bruce also learns that all this time, Stearns not only stored his blood samples but also created a serum from it. Moreover, he had already started using Banner's blood for his own research because he wanted to create new medicines. At that moment, the military surrounds the lab. Bruce realizes that if the government gets all this research, they'll try to create an army of super soldiers again. Emil Blonsky bursts into the lab. Now he's no longer satisfied with the regular serum, he demands to be injected with Banner's blood. Stearns warns that the consequences could be terrifying, that he could become an abomination, but Blonsky doesn't listen. During the chaos, drops of Banner's blood fall directly onto Stearns' head, and he begins to mutate strangely. Yes, that's when Marvel first hints at the appearance of the future leader. The Abomination takes to the streets and starts destroying everything in its path. The army proves powerless to stop it, and Bruce realizes that no one else can stop the monster but him. He jumps straight from a helicopter, transforms into the Hulk, and the final carnage begins. Despite the Abomination's incredible strength, the Hulk ultimately prevails and defeats him. Banner understands that as long as he's around, she will never be safe. So he leaves again into solitude. Some time later, Tony Stark walks into a bar. He meets with General Ross and hints that he's assembling a special team. 2 years after the events of the Incredible Hulk, Bruce lives somewhere in India and has aged a bit. Time spares no one. Because Loki stole the Tesseract from S.H.I.E.L.D., Natasha Romanoff tracks down Bruce Banner so he can help find the Tesseract. When he gets caught on the helicarrier, Bruce, using a spectrometer, searches for the Tesseract because it emits gamma radiation. He does everything possible to get captured, because he had a secret plan. He tries to anger the Hulk and break the team apart, but for now Bruce teams up with Stark to study the scepter and find the Tesseract. Banner starts to suspect Nick Fury and realizes they need the Tesseract for other purposes, and it turns out they want to make weapons. Because of this, everyone argues and doesn't notice that while they're sorting things out, Loki's forces attack the helicarrier. Bruce transforms into the Hulk and attacks Natasha, but Black Widow manages to calm him down, and Thor has to subdue Banner. During the battle, he gets shot by a jet, but the Hulk destroys it and then falls. He's found by an old man who gives him clothes. After that, he somehow finds a motorcycle and comes to the fight. Then he reveals his secret, that he's always angry. By the way, Robert Downey Jr. came up with that line. After that, the real carnage begins. The team wins, and the Hulk goes off to live his own life. After the Battle of New York, a team led by Adrian Toomes collects alien technology. They wanted to develop many things, and Adrian invested all his money in this business, but their work is taken over by Damage Control, an agency that handles cleanup after superhero battles. The creator of this organization was Tony Stark. Ironically, Damage Control has now drastically changed its direction. They hunt people with superpowers. Toomes' team is forced to surrender everything, but they keep one truck and decide not to give it up. 3 years after the events of the Avengers, the team reunites to find the scepter. During this time, the Hulk has learned to transform back into a human. They retrieve the scepter, and Stark together with Bruce create Ultron, an artificial intelligence meant to protect the world from alien threats. But of course, what could go wrong? Ultron becomes evil. He kills Jarvis, creates a body for himself, and also recruits Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, twins who lost their parents and now hate Stark. Ultron wants to find vibranium, a very valuable and durable metal from Wakanda, to create a new body for himself. But the Avengers find him. Wanda starts messing with everyone's minds. The Hulk gets the worst of it, he loses control and starts smashing everything in his path. Tony calls in Veronica and knocks him out, but the Hulk manages to destroy part of the city. Because of this, everyone hates the Avengers. To keep a low profile, the team goes to Clint Barton's safe house. Natasha wants to leave with Bruce and live a normal life, although he understands that will never happen. Meanwhile, Ultron hypnotizes Dr. Helen Cho and wants her to create a full body for him. Wanda sees that he wants to destroy humanity, so she betrays Ultron and leaves. After this, Ultron's attack is thwarted, and the Avengers steal the cradle with Vision inside. They are helped by Pietro. Ultron hides and kidnaps Natasha, while the cradle is delivered to Stark. They try to upload the Vision's consciousness into the body, but they aren't successful right away. However, they eventually create Vision. When the team learns of Ultron's plans, they head to Sokovia. The Hulk finds and frees Natasha. He wants to live a normal life with her, but Natasha pushes him away so the Hulk can help the Avengers. A massive battle begins. When everything is almost over, Natasha starts singing a lullaby, but Ultron shoots the Hulk. He gets into a jet and realizes he's not loved on Earth, so he decides to leave. After a long journey, the Hulk lands on the planet Sakaar, where he participates in various fights and becomes champion. 6 months later, a gang appears in Hell's Kitchen that kills an Irish crime group, but it quickly becomes clear that it's not a gang, it's one man, Frank Castle, aka the Punisher. Frank was a Marine and worked in hot spots, but one day he decided to leave service and return to his family. Unfortunately, one evening his entire family is killed in a park. Frank takes a bullet to the head but survives and decides to take revenge. He thinks the Irish are to blame, which is why he wants to kill them all, but Matt Murdock, Daredevil, gets in his way. After several fights, Matt captures Frank and hands him over to the authorities. After that, he becomes his lawyer because they want to illegally execute him, and they manage to avoid that, although Frank is still sent to prison. Meanwhile, Elektra, Matt's ex-love, appears in the city. It turns out she's working with Stick, Daredevil Sensei, and they're opposing the Hand. In prison, Castle connects with a crime lord named Wilson Fisk. He helps Frank escape, and Frank goes on a rampage. After that, he kills a few more people involved in his family's death. Meanwhile, Stick is kidnapped by the Hand, and they deliberately lure Elektra because she's the Hand's secret weapon, the Black Sky. In the end, Elektra refuses to help the Hand and fights against them. Frank bursts into the fight, but in the end, Elektra dies. A few weeks later, the Hand resurrects her, and Frank gets a new target. Around the same time, Peter Parker is bitten by a radioactive spider and gains his powers. But now let's quickly go over the Defenders to understand who the Hand is. Alexandra Reed, the leader of the Hand, is diagnosed with cancer and has only weeks to live. Meanwhile, the Hand has found a secret wall that only the Iron Fist can open. They also resurrect Elektra, although she's lost her memory and gone a bit crazy. Daredevil, Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and Iron Fist unite and learn that the Hand needs the Iron Fist. But Elektra appears, kills Stick, and takes Danny. In the end, Elektra kills Alexandra and becomes the leader of the Hand. The heroes decide to collapse the building under which the wall is located, but Matt and Elektra remain inside. However, neither dies. Elektra will appear in the third season of Daredevil, Born Again. Some time later, scientist Quentin Beck creates a revolutionary hologram system, but Tony Stark uses it for psychotherapy and renames it BARF. Quentin was furious, and when he started trying to convince Stark that the technology could be used for more useful purposes, Tony fired him as mentally unstable. After the government noticed that the Avengers were causing more and more destruction, they created the Sokovia Accords. But not the entire team agreed to sign them, which led to a rift. Tony started recruiting new heroes to stop Captain America. Among them was Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Stark learned his identity and came to him supposedly to discuss an internship. He convinces Peter to fight alongside him, and Peter agrees, though not right away. They go to Germany. Peter gets a new suit and fights Cap, but loses. However, with his help, they manage to take down Ant-Man. He also defeats Falcon and Bucky. But in the end, his superhero mission ends. He's told to go home and stop heroics. 8 years later, Toomes has salvaged a truck full of Chitauri technology. His company has grown significantly. He's made a special Vulture suit to steal even more technology. After the fight in Germany, Peter gets a new suit from Tony Stark and waits for his next assignment. He has a best friend, Ned Leeds. Ned suggests they build the Death Star together after school, but Peter doesn't listen because he's distracted by his classmate Liz. Peter turns down his after-school activities, including decathlon, because he doesn't want to miss a new assignment from Tony Stark. Meanwhile, he does his Spider-Man duties and helps ordinary people, but in the evening he sees criminals robbing a store using Vulture's weapons. During the fight, due to an overly powerful charge, Mr. Delmar's store is destroyed. Peter tries to contact Happy to explain the situation, but Happy ignores him because he's busy moving the Avengers to a new headquarters. When Peter comes home, Ned sees him in his Spider-Man suit and figures out he's Spider-Man. When they learn that Liz likes Spider-Man, Ned says Peter knows him, which is why they're invited to a party so Peter can bring his so-called friend. Parker plans to come to the party as Spider-Man. He notices an explosion and sees Aaron Davis, who wants to scare someone. That's why he's looking to buy weapons. Due to a stupid call, Peter gives himself away. A chase begins, but the man known as Shocker doesn't want to call the Vulture, so another accomplice does. In the end, the Vulture catches Peter, but Stark's suit saves him. Tony, meanwhile, is in India and tells Peter not to get involved, but Parker doesn't listen and finds the core. They start studying it. The Vulture kills the previous Shocker and gives the weapons to someone else. They find the school party to retrieve their weapons, but Peter puts a bug on them, and when they stop at Maryland, Peter realizes he needs to be there. That's why he rejoins the decathlon team, because the competition is nearby. When he finds out Happy is following him, he decides to remove the bug from the suit and places it in a lamp. He also disables the training wheels protocol. Now he has full access to all suit functions. He finds the criminals and learns they're planning a heist, but Peter intervenes, first inside the trucks, and then in the heavily guarded damage control building. He discovers that the purple devices are bombs and does everything to catch up with his class. In the meantime, the team wins the competition and heads to the Washington Monument, but the device explodes. Fortunately, Spider-Man manages to save them, but the Vulture no longer has enough resources to complete the job, so he decides to kill Spider-Man. However, he learns that Peter saved his daughter. Peter tries to track down a previous buyer and finds Aaron Davis. Aaron tells him about his nephew Miles, and his accomplice reveals where the next deal will happen. His associate, Scorpion, tries to buy weapons. Stark realizes something's wrong, and Peter finds out he ruined an FBI operation to arrest Toomes. During the battle, the ship splits in half. Peter tries to fix everything but fails, and Iron Man helps him. After this, Tony takes the suit back. The Vulture decides to pull off a major heist and asks for vacuum-sealed storage. Peter starts living a normal life and invites Liz to the prom. He meets her parents, and it turns out her father is the Vulture. He, in turn, realizes Peter is Spider-Man and starts blackmailing him, but Parker doesn't listen. He puts on his old suit and fights Shocker. He steals Flash's car to catch the Vulture. The Vulture wants to steal Stark's tech. During transport, the Vulture sets a trap for Peter and collapses a building on him, but he escapes. After that, Toomes redirects the plane, but Parker interferes and they crash. A fight breaks out, in which Peter wins in the sense that he simply saves the Vulture. Liz moves to another city. Adrian begins to watch Peter and suspects he's Spider-Man. For this, Happy calls him, and they head together to the new Avengers headquarters. Tony offers him to become part of the team, but he refuses, though he does get his suit back. In the end, we learn that Toomes and Scorpion are behind bars, and the latter wants revenge on Spider-Man. 2 months later, Frank Castle starts living a personal life. After all, he killed everyone responsible for his family's death. But it turns out he hasn't killed everyone. Gotta move the plot forward somehow. He learns that other people are involved, and it's all because of a recording that was leaked online. They thought Frank did it, but no, it was a guy from this universe. Okay, kidding, it's Lieberman, who becomes Frank's ally. In the end, we learn that Billy Russo, an old friend of the Punisher who works for William Rawlins, is behind it all. They kidnap Lieberman's family, but Frank saves everyone, kills Rawlins, and disfigures Russo's face, though he doesn't kill him. In Season 2, Frank Castle saves a girl named Amy from a killer known as the Pilgrim. Meanwhile, Russo escapes from the hospital, puts on a mask, gathers a gang of veterans, and craves revenge against the Punisher. Frank returns to New York, teams up with Madani to protect Amy, and simultaneously tracks down Russo. Everything reaches a breaking point when the Pilgrim takes Frank's friends hostage and Russo sets up an ambush. In the end, Frank kills everyone, and Amy moves to Florida. 3 months later, Frank refuses to work for the government and fully embraces his identity as the Punisher, continuing his war on crime. 2 years after the events of Avengers, Age of Ultron, Thor also ends up on Sakaar and is forced to fight the champion to gain his freedom. And that champion turns out to be the Hulk, except he doesn't remember Thor. In a dirty fight, Thor wins, but after that they become friends. Thor summons Valkyrie to help him. He tries to recruit her, but she refuses. Then they both find the Quinjet, but the Hulk destroys it. A recording of Natasha plays, and the Hulk transforms back into Bruce. Banner realizes he was the Hulk for 2 years and is horrified. But still, together with Thor, Valkyrie, and Loki, they form a team. The Revengers steal a ship and fly through a wormhole, the shortest route to Asgard to defeat Hela, the goddess of death. When they arrive, Bruce jumps and turns into the Hulk. This is his last transformation into the rage-filled version of Hulk for now, but we'll see it again soon. They defeat Hela, but in the process, Asgard is destroyed, and they fly to Earth on a ship. The Asgardian ship is intercepted by Thanos, who takes the Space Stone, one of the 6 Infinity Stones that Loki took from Odin's vault. But the Hulk fights Thanos and loses badly, causing his other personality to refuse to come out. Thanos sends him to Earth, where he warns Doctor Strange and Wong about Thanos' arrival. They find Stark and explain who Thanos is and that he wants all 6 Infinity Stones to wipe out half of all life. Immediately, Thanos' ship arrives on Earth with his minions. Bruce can't transform into the Hulk, so he's taken away from the fight. The ship catches Peter Parker's attention. He puts on his suit and goes to investigate. During the fight, Ebony Maw steals the Time Stone, but Peter follows him and ends up in space with no air. Tony gives him a new Iron Spider suit and sends him home, but Peter clings to the ship and flies with them. Using their knowledge of cinema, they defeat Ebony Maw and free Strange. Tony decides to surprise Thanos and goes to his homeworld, Titan. There, they meet the Guardians of the Galaxy and together plan an ambush, though not right away, after a small scuffle. Bruce calls Cap to warn him about Thanos and find Vision, who has the Mind Stone in his head. He's living with Wanda, but when Thanos' children attack them, Cap's team saves them. They come to a consensus that the stone needs to be removed from Vision's head and then destroyed, so they head to the high-tech African nation of Wakanda. Shuri, Chalia's sister, can do it, but she needs a lot of time. So the Avengers arm themselves and prepare for battle. Since Bruce can't transform into the Hulk, he's given the Hulkbuster, a powerful modular armor designed by Iron Man. When Thanos arrives on Titan, the heroes almost get the gauntlet off him, but Peter Quill ruins the plan, and Thanos defeats them all. In the end, Strange gives Thanos the Time Stone to spare Tony's life. The Avengers team loses the battle, and Thanos collects all the Infinity Stones and snaps his fingers. Spider-Man disappears. Thor kills Thanos, but since he destroyed the Infinity Stones, Thor's action is futile. After this, Tony Stark builds Bruce a lab in Mexico. That's where he conducts his experiments. Bruce blames himself for the loss and starts experimenting. He achieves a breakthrough, he merges himself with his alter ego and creates Smart Hulk. 5 years later, the Avengers come to him with a small request, to build a time machine. The team wants to go back in time, collect the Infinity Stones, snap, and bring everyone back. What could go wrong? Banner agrees, but nothing works. But then Tony Stark arrives and fixes everything. Bruce and Rocket go after Thor to bring him back into shape, but during this time, Thor has changed mentally and physically, though more physically. Bruce convinces him to return, and he agrees, but the deciding factor is Rocket mentioning there's beer on the ship. And so the Avengers determine where they need to go and begin their journey. The Hulk ends up in 2012 and must get the Time Stone from the Ancient One, but she doesn't want to give it up. However, after a few minutes, she changes her mind. When Banner returns, he learns that Natasha has died. Still, for her sake, he snaps his fingers to bring everyone back. This causes a severe burn on his arm. But it turns out that Thanos was swapped out and, using the time machine, brought his ship into the present. The final battle begins, and Spider-Man joins in. He meets Tony, and they embrace. But to save everyone, Tony sacrifices himself. The Iron Man gives his life. 6 months after the finale, in the Shang-Chi post-credit scene, we see that some Avengers still exist, including Bruce, who is studying the 10 rings. After the finale, everyone returns and hasn't aged. The students who disappeared have to retake all their exams, and they also have new classmates who were still little just yesterday for them. Among them is Brad Davis, who falls in love with MJ. Around this time, elementals appear from Mexico. Mysterio fights them. Peter also falls in love with MJ and wants to confess his feelings. In Paris, May starts helping everyone. After the finale, she works at a shelter. Spider-Man looks for Nick Fury, but Fury doesn't want to be a superhero on vacation, so Peter doesn't bring his suit, though he still packs it in his suitcase. When Parker arrives in Venice, he buys a necklace for MJ, a black dahlia. But they're attacked by a water elemental, and Peter fights it. However, he's powerless. Mysterio helps him. After this, Beck becomes famous. Peter finds Nick Fury to stay out of his way. He knocks Fury out and also gives Peter Tony Stark's glasses. Peter meets Beck, and Beck explains he's from another universe, and his Earth was destroyed. The elementals are created inside black holes and appear in the same places as they did on Beck's Earth. Mysterio defeated them all, but one remains, the fire elemental, the strongest one. Nick Fury reveals he's a Skrull because he says Beck is also from Earth, just not yours, and he wants Peter to come with them to Prague and help with the elemental, since the other Avengers are unavailable. Peter doesn't want to participate because he doesn't want to abandon his class. Plus, if his friends see Spider-Man in the same city they're in, they'll figure out the truth. So Fury agrees and lets him go, then pays for the entire class to go to Prague. He also gives Peter a new suit so he won't be recognized as Spider-Man. But while he's changing in his room, Brad walks in and takes a photo. He wants to show it to MJ. Peter, of course, doesn't want that, so he decides to delete the photo using Edith, an advanced AI system that gives Peter access to drones and other resources. In the process, he accidentally activates a drone. The drone tries to kill Brad, but Peter destroys it. Everyone looks out the window except MJ, and that's when she realizes Peter is Spider-Man. He eventually deletes the photo. When they get to the hotel, Maria Hill calls and tells him to put on the suit. While the rest of the class rests, Fury's plan is disrupted, and Peter talks with Beck. Peter explains he wanted to spend his vacation differently, but Mysterio gives him a motivational speech and advises him to get his friends off the street. So the entire class is given free opera tickets. MJ offers Peter to sit next to her, but he abandons her, and MJ secretly follows him. Betty and Ned do the same. The elemental appears on the street, but no, Betty and Ned get stuck on the Ferris wheel. They see Spider-Man, but he tells them it's not him, it's his double, and his name is Night Monkey. During the battle, Peter grabs a drone, and MJ is caught by him. He and Beck defeat the elemental. After the battle, they celebrate, and Parker realizes he's unworthy of the glasses, so he gives them to Mysterio. But it turns out Beck is a fraud, he has no powers at all. All the elementals were illusions created by former Tony Stark employees who hate him. Amid all this, the school trip ends, and everyone returns home. Peter invites MJ for a walk. He wants to confess his feelings, but she interrupts and says it for him, that he's Spider-Man. Peter doesn't confess, but MJ pulls out a projector with his webbing. She accidentally turns it on, and they realize it's not real. Then Parker admits he's Spider-Man. MJ says she was 68% sure, in the original, she says 67%. Mysterio plans to use Edith to get more drones. But Beck notices one drone doesn't have a projector, so he tracks it and sees that Peter figured everything out. Now he wants to kill him. Peter decides to go to Berlin and talk to Fury directly because he's afraid of being bugged. He arrives and is immediately met by Fury, but it turns out it's all an illusion, and Beck starts tormenting him. Through deception, he finds out who else knows it's all an illusion. After this, Peter is hit by a train and ends up in the Netherlands. That's why he calls Happy. Happy gives him a motivational speech, and Peter creates a new suit for himself. Meanwhile, the real Fury and Maria Hill receive a notification about an energy pulse in London. At the same time, Peter's class is taken by Beck's people and left in the most dangerous place. Fury sends a message to Peter, hinting that Mysterio is the bad guy. The final elemental appears, and Happy drops Peter off. The battle begins. Beck's illusion starts failing because of Spider-Man. Beck wants to take Peter's friends, but he blows up the machine. Parker defeats Beck thanks to his Peter Tingle and recalls all the drones. However, Mysterio makes a final recording, supposedly Peter killed him, and he's responsible for all the destruction. But I think he's alive because he was in concept art for No Way Home. MJ gets the necklace, though it's a bit broken, and they confess their feelings. About a week later, Peter is flying around with MJ on his web, and Beck reveals his secret identity. For the first time, we see J. Jonah Jameson from this universe, who has been slightly betrayed by his barber. What, you don't trust your barber? Yeah, it's a setup. In the end, we learn that Nick Fury and Maria Hill are Skrulls, and the real Fury is watching from a space station. After Mysterio revealed Spider-Man's identity, everyone started hating him. Damage Control took all the technology and wanted to press charges, but he's defended by a blind lawyer, Matt Murdock, and everything works out. However, Peter is still hated, blamed for the destruction in London, and his friends can't get into any college. That's why Parker decides to turn to his colleague, Stephen Strange. He asks him to erase everyone's memory. But during the process, Strange messes up the spell because Peter keeps changing it. Strange traps the spell in a special cube. Now people who knew Peter Parker from other universes are coming into this one, but the heroes don't know that yet. Parker wants to personally talk to the person in charge of college admissions, but their conversation is interrupted by Dr. Octavius, who recognizes Peter Parker, though a different one. During the fight, Otto takes Peter's nanotech, but he doesn't know that Peter can now control it. He saves the college administrator, and she tells him he now has a real chance of getting in. But then they're attacked by the Green Goblin. Doctor Strange quickly teleports Peter and Otto to the basement and explains that he must now return all the villains. To do this, Peter calls his friends, Ned and MJ. They quickly track down the villains, thinking it's the Green Goblin, because Peter can't remove the suit's color, so he turns it inside out. He explains that Osborn died long ago, but Peter still goes there. He spots Electro and Sandman, then sends them to the dungeon. When it's all over, May calls and tells him one of the villains came to her. It turns out to be Norman Osborn, who was incredibly scared to find himself in another universe. Peter brings him to the Sanctum Sanctorum, where everyone realizes that the villains were taken from their universes right before their deaths, and if they're sent back, they'll die. Of course, Peter still explains to Strange that it's too dangerous and doesn't want to send them back. They fight, and Peter even defeats Strange, leaving him in the mirror dimension so he can't interfere. Parker wants to cure all the villains before sending them home. He gives the devices to MJ so she can send everyone back if necessary. He goes with all the villains to Happy's apartment, where there's plenty of useful equipment. Using it, he cures Otto and almost drains all the energy from Electro, but Electro doesn't want to go home, he likes this world. Peter develops his spider sense. He realizes the Goblin's second personality has taken over. All the villains go crazy except Otto. A fight breaks out between Goblin and Peter. May tries to cure Norman, but she can't, and Goblin carries out his old plan, striking at the heart and killing May. But with her last breath, she tells Peter the famous words about great power and responsibility. Peter is crushed with grief, and his friends worry about him. Ned accidentally opens a portal, and out comes Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. After careful checks, they realize he's really from another universe. After that, they call in Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. The three Peters come to a conclusion that Peter is feeling terrible. MJ guesses where he might be, and the friends comfort him. The other Spider-Men give motivational speeches, well, more like they share how much they've suffered and understand that May's death wasn't in vain. The three Spider-Men unite to create a cure for each villain. Ned learns that in another universe, Peter Parker's best friend tried to kill him. He promises Peter that won't happen here. Parker lures all the villains to the Statue of Liberty, and they arrive. We see an incredibly cool spectacle. The Peters cure the villains one by one, and even Otto helps them. Ned accidentally opens a portal, and he realizes Peter's plan is working. But at the last moment, the Green Goblin appears and blows everything up. Because of this, MJ falls, and she's saved by Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, who redeems his past mistake. Peter is furious and almost kills the Goblin, but the other Spider-Men help him overcome his hatred. They cure Norman, but rifts appear in the sky, and even more villains could enter their world. That's why Peter decides to erase everyone's memory of him. He tells his friends and promises he'll tell them the truth someday. Everyone forgets Peter Parker, and the guests from other universes return home. Eddie Brock, who also ended up in the MCU, leaves a symbiote sample and returns. Weeks later, Peter decides to reach out to MJ but sees a small wound on her and realizes that as long as he's with her, she'll always be in danger, so he chooses not to say anything. He makes himself a new suit, inspired by the other Spider-Men, and continues protecting the city. A couple of months later, Bruce showcases his invention that prevents him from turning into the Hulk. But after an accident, his blood mixes with that of Jennifer Walters, his cousin. She becomes She-Hulk due to gamma radiation. Jennifer, who is a bit different, manages to heal his arm. After that, he trains She-Hulk. When the training ends, he heads to the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. A few episodes later, he comes to help Jennifer defeat the Abomination and another guy, but she breaks the fourth wall and cancels everything. That's why Hulk appears at the end with his son, who was born on Sakaar. To be honest, this series is so bad that I only watched scenes with Bruce, and even that was torture for me. Over a year later, we find Frank Castle with the Punisher, and he's told that copycats have appeared. Frank doesn't care. In the end, he returns at the best moment and helps Matt deal with Fisk's army. After that, he goes after the copycats and unleashes a real bloodbath. He's briefly knocked out and put in a cage, but Frank quickly escapes. A year later, the Punisher is depressed and misses his family, yes, once again. But an elderly woman approaches him. The thing is, Frank once killed her entire family, and she hires a bunch of hitmen to kill him. What follows is nearly half an hour of another bloodbath. In the end, Frank kills everyone and saves a little girl who reminds him of his daughter. After this, the real Punisher returns.